Hello, good morning to those in Brazil. Good evening to those in Japan. My name is Mariana Buquerque. I am a professor of the Institute of International Relations and Defense at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and also a senior fellow at the Asia program at CEBRI. And today it is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to the webinar, Economic Cooperation Between Japan and Brazil, Looking to the Future. This is the second event in a series of 3, organized by CEBRI, the Consulate General of Japan in Rio de Janeiro, and the Japan House in São Paulo. I would like to seize this opportunity to express our gratitude to Consul General Takashi Manabe and his team at the consulate for partnering with us for this initiative. The first event we held last month was about geopolitics and security in Asia and the role that Japan plays in that scenario. The third event next month will be about sustainability and environmental cooperation, and please subscribe to CEBRI's newsletter to receive all the information about this event as well. Today, our focus will be on economy and trade. Brazil and Japan economic cooperation goes back in time, but we have some good examples of its importance recently. Currently, Japan is Brazil's second largest trade partner in Asia. And last year, when Prime Minister Kishida visited Brazil, the two countries signed more than 30 agreements that directly or indirectly are related to economic ties. In the same occasion, Vice President Geraldo Alckmin met the Prime Minister as well, and they participated in the Brazil-Japan Economic Forum. So to dive deep in this topic, I am honored to invite two specialists to share their views. Professor Nobuaki Hamaguchi, who is a professor at the Research Institute for Economics and Business Administrations of Kobe University in Japan, and also serves as vice chair of the Japan Association of Latin America and the Caribbean. And also Minister Luiz Fernando Furlan, who is a trustee at CEBRI, was the Brazilian former Minister of Development, Industry and Foreign Trade, and is currently a member of the WISE Group Brazil and Japan. So let's kick off the debate. Professor Yamaguchi, you are very welcome to have the floor and share with us your initial remarks.
Thank you. Minister Luiz Fernando Furlan, Professor Mariana Albuquerque, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to our friends in Brazil, and good evening to those in Japan. I am Nobuaki Hamaguchi from Kobe University. As a researcher who has dedicated 35 years of professional life to studying the Brazilian economy, it is a great honor and a special privilege to be invited by prestigious CEBRI as a speaker at this remarkable event commemorating 130 years of the enduring friendship between Brazil and Japan. I also extend my gratitude to the Consulate General of Japan in Rio de Janeiro and the Japan House in São Paulo for their valuable support. The bilateral relationship between Brazil and Japan has strengthened significantly in recent years. Both countries have hosted key international summits such as G7 Hiroshima Summit in 2023 and the G20 Rio Summit in 2024. During these events, the leaders of both nations confirmed each other's significance on the international stage and emphasized the need for cooperation to foster global economic prosperity and international security. As global strategic partners each other, the foreign ministers of Brazil and Japan have been meeting annually to develop various projects at the ground level. Notably, as Professor Albuquerque has talked about today, last May, former Prime Minister Kishida made an official visit to Brazil, presenting a future-oriented agenda for both countries, accompanied by a delegation of more than 40 Japanese enterprises. His visit resulted in the signing of 36 business cooperation agreements. We will revisit this agenda and these projects shortly. Furthermore, we look forward to President Lula's visit to Japan in March, which is expected to elevate the bilateral cooperation to new heights. Additionally, distinguished business delegations will participate in the Osaka Kansai Expo later this year, making 2025 a truly remarkable year in celebrating Brazil-Japan friendship. From now on, I would like to share my screen presenting using my supporting material. Sorry. Now, let us briefly reflect on our long history of friendship. On November 15th, 1895, the Treaty of Amity, Commerce, and Navigation was signed between Brazil and Japan in France. Following its ratification, diplomatic missions were established in 1897. The first Japanese immigration ship departed from the port of Kobe, where I am speaking today, in 1905. This marked the beginning of a significant migration wave with 189,000 Japanese immigrants arriving in Brazil before World War II and another 68,000 in the post-war period, seeking new opportunities. Today, there are 2.7 million Japanese descendant Brazilians and approximately 210 Brazilian residents in Japan, forging strong human ties unparalleled in other bilateral relationships. The economic cooperation between our two nations has evolved around a complementary structure. During Japan's industrialization, Brazil served as a crucial supplier of raw materials. Large industrial projects such as Usiminas in iron and steel, Cenibra, paper and pulp, and Albras in aluminum were implemented through national projects supported by major corporate consortia and government financial backing. In response to that, Banco do Brasil and Companhia Vale do Rio Doce established branches in Tokyo, further strengthening financial cooperation. While Brazil was also undergoing industrialization, Japanese companies actively established factories in the country, notably Ishibura's in Rio de Janeiro in shipbuilding. It is perhaps not widely known, but Toyota's first overseas factory was also in Brazil. Following the end of large-scale immigration and a growing focus on natural resource-driven businesses, then Prime Minister Kakuei Tanaka visited Brazil in 1974, accompanied by a delegation of major industrial groups from Keidanren. The Brazil-Japan Business Forum was established in collaboration with the Confederation of National Industries, CNI, during this visit, and it continues to convene to this day. Prime Minister Tanaka's visit also marked the beginning of bilateral cooperation in agricultural development. It is reported that as he flew over the Cerrado region before landing in Brasilia, he inquired why such vast land remained unused. After thorough studies and discussions, and following President Geisler's visit to Japan, pilot projects were launched in Minas Gerais in 1976. Subsequently, the Japan-Brazil Cooperation Program for Agricultural Development of the Cerrado region, PRODECER, was implemented from 1979 to 2001, covering 334 hectares across 21 project sites in the central western and inland northeastern regions. This initiative attracted settlers from the southern states of Brazil, aided by agriculture credit and technical assistance from the project. In addition, Embrapa played a crucial role in developing seed varieties suited to the Cerrado's soil and climate. As is well known, this project helped transform the Cerrado into today's breadbasket of the world. Despite significant progress in cooperation, bilateral relations stagnated during the 1990s and early 2000s due to economic challenges faced by both nations. Both Brazil and Japan placed more emphasis on cooperation with neighboring countries in their diplomacy. However, shifting geopolitical dynamics have prompted Japan to adopt a more proactive global strategy for the promotion of economic stability and national security. In 2014, then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe articulated Japan's three together policy toward Latin America, or Tres Juntos in Portuguese, emphasizing the principles of progressing together, leading together, and inspiring together. This approach fosters a collaborative partnership between the two peace-loving nations engaged in open global trade. Japan invites Brazil to work together toward sustainability, social well-being, and stable international order based on the shared fundamental values in economic freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. Japan calls for cooperation with Latin America, especially Brazil, on issues such as environmental protection, eradicating hunger by reinforcing food security, and ensuring the stability of global supply chains for critical minerals necessary for decarbonization, including lithium, copper, and niobium. Japan and Brazil are complementary in their relationship over natural resources, but they do not just need each other for their own specific economic prosperity. It has evolved into a relationship of working together in pursuit of the economic good, in pursuit of the common good on the basis of shared value. Prime Minister Kishida's visit in 2024 reinforced Japan's commitment to tangible cooperation. Brazil and Japan announced the Green Partnership Initiative, through which Japan is enhancing efforts to protect the Amazon rainforest. This initiative includes the JAXA-JICA Forest Early Warning System, utilizing satellite image and artificial intelligence to predict high-risk areas for illegal logging. JAXA is a Japan Aerospatial Exploration Agency, and JICA is Japan International Cooperation Agency. Additionally, Japan pledged $3 million to the Amazon Fund and provides technical assistance for the restoration of degraded pastured land through sustainable agroforestry practices. Another key initiative, the Initiative for Sustainable Fuel and Mobility, ICEFAM, centers on private sector investments. It promotes the supply chain of flex fuel hybrid engine vehicles. Toyota opposes the narrowing of decarbonization solutions to only battery electric vehicles, only for the unilateral reasons of the automobile manufacturers, and advocate a multi-pathway approach to mobility's future, leaving multiple alternatives such as hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and hydrogen-based fuel cell batteries, and let the market select the best solution in the future. In this context, the fusion of hybrid technology, which is the strength of Japanese companies, and the engines using biofuels, which are common in Brazil, is expected to provide a powerful solution. Brazil and Japan are expected to create a new value chain in this direction. According to a news report, Toyota has already successfully integrated hybrid technology with flex fuel engines in Brazil. The company is now expanding into flex plug-in hybrids and hybrid flex pickup trucks in 2025. Also, to promote private business in ICE-FAM framework, Japanese Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry calls for proposal of Japanese firms joint projects with Brazilian companies in demonstration experiment and verification of the sustainable aviation fuel technology and other application of biofuels. Moreover, in industries in which carbon emissions are hard to abate, the carbon emission trading system will attract Japanese investment in Brazil, because Brazil owns rich source of renewable energy at lower cost. These initiatives work for Brazil and Japan leading together in global climate change issue. It is also expected that more science and technology, science and academic cooperation would be enhanced between Brazil and Japan. Brazil's status in the scientific community is growing. Please look at the graph on your screen. In terms of the quantity of academic articles, Brazil was positioned at 18th in the world in 1999-2001. It rose to 12th in 2009-2011 and to 11th rank in 2019 and 2021. Brazil also improved the quality of academic output, as evidenced by the ranking of the articles with top 10% citation, rising from 21st in 1999 to 15th in 2019. The Brazilian academia excels in environmental and earth science, which is ranked 10th in 2019, and life science, which is ranked at 5th in the world in 2019. Brazil also contributed to expand the open access publication online platform called Cielo and enhanced the visibility of scientific articles published in Latin America. Despite the international recognition of the high level of Brazilian academia, joint research with Japanese researchers has been underexplored. The co-authorship between Japanese and Brazilian researchers has remained only 4% of all internationally co-authored articles in Brazil. Support of joint research will benefit the academia in both countries and should promote application to real use. A notable exception is the Laboratory of Immunopathology Keizo Asami, LICA, at Federal University of Pernambuco. Founded as JICA's project in 1986 to 1992, JICA supported 70 Brazilian researchers training in Japan and 30 Japanese researchers working as experts in LICA, as well as acquisition of equipment. Now, LICA has earned a global reputation in diagnosis of genetic and infectious diseases, as well as a center of developing vaccines. Precision agriculture, or digital transformation of agriculture, looks like an area to which Japanese scientific knowledge may suitably to contribute. This technology has impacts on agriculture productivity improvements, especially for small family agriculture, enhancing food security and reducing environmental damage from agriculture. These initiatives in academic exchanges will work for Brazil-Japan inspiring together. Next, let us consider the prospects of deepening bilateral trade. In the meeting with Prime Minister Kishida last May, President Lula emphasized the Brazilian interest in the opening of Japanese beef market. The negotiation has been stalled over the sanitary issue. More than half of the Japanese beef consumption comes from imports. Japan currently imports beef mainly from the United States and Australia. The beef import is declining because of the higher price due to the devaluation of yen in recent years. The demand has shifted to locally produced beef. Although the prospects of Brazilian beef in Japanese market will depend on its price competitiveness against Australian and American beef, but it makes sense considering the fact that Brazil is already the global top beef exporter in the world. Is Japan too far to export meat from Brazil? Not really, considering the Brazilian chicken already dominating the 70% of the Japanese market, although Thailand is recovering the share in recent years. It is also happening that Japanese import of Brazilian pork grew substantially last year. The news report says that soaring material purchase prices are forcing many ramen noodle restaurants to close. You know, the ramen noodle is the soul food of the Japanese people, but it's in danger. The report also says that the price competitiveness of Brazilian pork stands out among other suppliers such as Canada, US, Mexico, Denmark, and Chile. Remember also that Mexico and Chile have become major suppliers of pork to Japan after they signed free trade agreements. If Japan signs free trade agreements with Mercosur, pork will be imported cheaply from Brazil and ramen shops may be saved. Free trade with Mercosur will contribute to lowering food prices in general. In fact, Japanese agriculture already imports Brazilian corns in large volume to feed its livestock. Interestingly, the largest share of soybean meal imports, also used for animal feed, comes from China. I imagine that once the soybeans are imported to China from Brazil, soybean meals, after squeezing oil, are exported to Japan at a higher price. After beef imports will be liberalized, these animal feed imports will be substituted with meat. The issue of agriculture trade will be a crucial central issue when President Lula will come to Japan. The deepening of trade is critical for Brazil and Japan progressing together. Finally, I'd like to share with you one of my recent research. In October 2023, Brazil and Japan mutually exempted entry visa for short-term staying less than 90 days. If we look at the gross numbers, the annual average number of Brazilian tourists visiting Japan was about 34,000 before the COVID-19. After dropping to almost zero during the pandemic, the number of tourists arrived from Brazil grew by 113% to 73,000 after the tourist visa was exempted compared to the figures before the COVID-19. However, it is hard to distinguish the effect of visa exemption from the general tendency of foreign tourists increase in Japan. According to my rough calculation using a comparison to the counterfactual data simulated as if there were no visa waiver, about 1/4 of the 73,000 Brazilian tourists, which is about 20,000 annually, would not come to Japan if there were no visa exemptions. In other words, the visa exemption increased the Brazilian tourists nearly by 25%. Although expanding these numbers, this figure is still substantially lower compared to the tourist arrival from Mexico, because there are daily direct flights from Mexico City to Tokyo, which is highly also desired between Brazil and Japan too. Also, the Japanese tourists to Brazil have not been increasing despite of the visa exemption. I believe this is partly affected by the devaluation of yen, but more active tourist promotion is needed. I conclude my speech by saying that the bilateral relationship between Brazil and Japan has gained momentum and turned the page from pure complementarity to complementarity with shared value. The future-looking approach must be strengthened and amplified. The 130 years commemoration is a pivotal opportunity to reinforce and expand our collaboration. Let us continue building a future of mutual prosperity, sustainability, and innovation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Professor Hamaguchi, for this very comprehensive presentation. I have already received some questions that I will save for later, but now I would like to invite Minister Furlan to this conversation. So please, Minister, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good morning, good evening, everybody. I would like to thank for the invitation to CEBRI, to Japan House, and the Japanese Consulate in Rio de Janeiro. For a coincidence, I'm a member of CEBRI and also the board of Japan House. Besides of the WISE group that was quoted at the beginning. Hamaguchi-san, you have made a beautiful, extensive, and intensive presentation. So I was thinking here not to repeat what you said because it was very interesting, your analysis in order to see what are the opportunities we have between Japan and Brazil. I must say that the image of Japan in our country, Brazil, is in a very high level. Very, very high level. You mentioned that we have a lot of Japanese descendants in Brazil in different areas, in different positions, entrepreneurs, professors, politicians, business people. And this is good because Japanese descendants in Brazil, they are integrated in the Brazilian society. Some of them got married with Brazilian people. And so it's quite interesting to see because I traveled a lot and I don't see this kind of integration in other parts of the world. And this is an opportunity that we could improve much more. As you mentioned, we have been losing opportunities in the past 20 to 30 years due to local environment in Japan or in Brazil. And Japan, from your side, you have chosen to expand the relationship with other countries, some of them in Asia, and also has chosen different regions of the world to improve. When you think that in 5 years, from 2002 to 2007, Brazilian exports grow from $60 billion to $160 billion in 4 years. That growth come from bilateral relationship between Brazil and Japan. I've been working for this free trade agreement among the members of the WISE group. Maybe you know this. There are 5 businessmen from Japan and 5 from Brazil. We'll have a meeting soon in next April, I believe. But we still dedicate time for speeches, and what we need is action. I learned in life that who has priorities has no priorities. We should focus in 2 or 3 priorities in order to deliver concrete initiatives. When Mr. Abe came to Brazil in 2014, a very fruitful visit. Now was last year, Prime Minister Kishida was present in Brasilia during the lunch. Unfortunately, incredibly, Brazil is not as doesn't have the punctuality of Japan. The president said that the lunch at the Palace of Itamaraty, Foreign Relations, and he didn't have time to speak. They came, they said hello, and they went out because they were delayed. I'm sure that the delay was not caused by the President, but President Lula's side. And everybody was there waiting for some good news, and they came and left quiet. It was not good. And in 2004, I began with the Minister of METI to study the possibility of Japan to blend some percentage of ethanol at the gasoline. We created a bilateral group between Brazil and Japan. We have some meetings, but all the distributors and the retail of fuel in Japan, they were against. And at the end, it was approved to blend, I think, 3%, but it was not mandatory. So that means nothing. It's not, if it's not mandatory, you don't use that. I've been a member of the global board of Panasonic during several years. So I had the opportunity to see development of new technologies by Panasonic and also Toyota. And I see that these companies, some of them, Panasonic, they made a new, now they are losing market for Taiwan companies and others. And Toyota is moving ahead. with the new vehicles that are hybrid and flex fuel, which are the cleanest vehicles. And when you talk about electric cars, you need to see where is the energy coming from. And so electric cars in China or in Japan and other parts, the electricity is not coming from processes. In Brazil, we have more than 90% of the energy that we consume coming from clean energy. 90%. When you talk about conservation, you spoke about, you know that Brazil has today more than 60% of the original forest we had in 1500 when the Portuguese arrived. When you talk about if you take the 60% of the Brazilian forests that are remaining as they were, you can put all together the 28 countries of European Union inside this area. Just to have an idea, we have an area preserved the size of all the countries of European Union, just to have an idea what has Brazil. When you told about visas, that was a big, big campaign made by the WISE group. Both sides were fighting for that, and finally we agreed. But still, the relation, maybe because of ticket prices for traveling, is very shy. The numbers increased, as you mentioned, but maybe advertising or some kind of special programs. Also for students, we see that there is an enormous space of cooperation between universities. And this could be improved much more. And I also was member of this Keidaneng CNE group. And we need to put more pressure on that. Maybe with the visit of President Lula next March, that could be a good idea. And you mentioned about animal protein. I was exercising before we began that the company I was chairman, Sadia, is the largest supplier of chicken legs to Japan. And we had the opportunity to import equipment. It's hard to understand that. To debone the legs of chickens, that the machinery can everyone into that, having a daily production of 6 million chickens, 12 million eggs. And you this in the Ford that you're repeating. But now with the Japanese equipment, it was wonderful because we liberate labor for other areas. So this is a kind of technological cooperation between Brazil and Japan. And beef and pork meat also, Brazil has today the highest standards because we have local corn and soybean meal that are the basic food for the animals. And not talking about the cooperation in health and medical system, equipments from Japan, research. We have a few Japanese companies in this area in Brazil producing for the population. But when you see what is happening in Brazil in terms of population growth of old people, Japan has maybe the best experience worldwide how to deal with this population in order that they could be in some ways productive, because nowadays you can work at home, you can use the screen to work, you don't need to mobilize people. But this is an area that Brazil needs Japanese advice. And so maybe in exploring the interchange between professionals from Brazil and Japan, we could move ahead. Not talking about the culture. I've been seeing at the Japan House. Let's make an advertising of Japan House. There are 3 Japan Houses worldwide: London, LA, and Brazil. In Brazil, we had already 4 million visitors. And we are #1 of the Japan houses worldwide. So the presentations at Japan houses are magnificent. We had one related to robots that was very interesting for senior people, for children. We had one about fashion. Who doesn't know about the Kenzo Takada, or other fashions in Japan? So sometimes you buy now. Kenzo was today. Kenzo is owned by Louis Vuitton. Maybe you didn't know about it. But in the old times, I met Kenzo Takada. He came to Brazil. And so there are so many areas, and also related to culture, that we can improve. I told about biofuels, and there is an interesting project related to green hydrogen. In the northeast of Brazil, we have clean energy produced by wind and by solar. And the whole region of the northeast of Brazil, in part of the year, is supplied only by these 2 origins: solar energy and eolic energy. And we can transform this energy to green hydrogen that could be exported to Japan. So companies in Japan that could make a partnership or new investments in this area, that could be great. I read also that the data centers with the artificial intelligence will consume more than 10% of the energy worldwide. Imagine where you can put a data center where the energy is available, green energy, clean energy. So there are so many opportunities, but if I can suggest only three priorities. One of them is related to environment. The other one is, of course, trade. And the third one is related to move ahead with this free trade agreement. Brazil has signed a free trade agreement with Chile because Mercosur is complicated. But we don't need a wide trade agreement. We need to begin and to focus in having an example, the trade agreement between Brazil and Chile. And with these three priorities, I believe that we could move ahead and not stay giving speeches and data and information and friendship and everything. At the end, we need to focus on growing opportunities between Brazil and Japan. That was my point.
Thank you very much, Minister Furlan, for also sharing your perspectives and also a perception that combines someone who is both member of some private sector boards and also served as a government official. So it was quite clear that you have a very comprehensive framework on the relations as well. And because you mentioned that we need to focus on concrete initiatives to move forward with the relations, I have a question to Professor Hamaguchi that is very concrete as well. So, Professor, if you would name a sector in which economic cooperation between Brazil and Japan is currently below its potential, what would that sector be? And what would you suggest that decision makers should do to improve it?
I have two suggestions. As one is exactly as Minister Furlan pointed out, is that energy sector. And Japan is now advancing the very strong commitment toward the decarbonization and the use of clean energy. But the renewable energy source is very expensive in Japan due to the limited access to the natural resources. So I think that this is a very large space for Japan to cooperate with Brazil, because Brazil is a very rich country in terms of natural resources. As Minister Furlan pointed out, biofuel, solar energy, and wind energy that can be technically transformed to the green hydrogen. And Japan is now trying to expand the international supply chain of green hydrogen. Now we are starting with Australia, but probably with countries in Latin America, maybe with Chile, and probably with Brazil. Although the distance is always a problem between us, but the advanced transportation technology will solve the problem. And the second issue is, as I pointed out, food sector. And so Brazil has a great world #1 potential in this area. And although I am politically not very supportive to the Japanese, support, too much support on agriculture sector. Okay,
Protectionism.
Agriculture sector should be more open to world global trade, because currently the food prices in Japan is extensively high. Especially this problem is getting more serious because of the the unusual climate change in recent years, very hot summer and very cold winter. So we have a serious food supply problem, and that will be much more serious in the near future. So I think the cooperation with the agricultural potential is very crucial for Japanese people. This is a problem of food security. So I think the energy sector and food sector are, in the short term, two main sectors that Japan can cooperate with Brazil more strongly.
Thank you, Professor. And I would like to develop a little bit further one of the comments that you just made about the distance between Brazil and Japan and how technology can be used to limit the shortcomings. And I would like to turn to Minister Furlan on that. Minister, considering the geographical distance between Brazil and Japan, what the two countries are already doing and could do to improve logistics and reduce costs?
Yes, and the past meeting of the WISE group in Japan last year, one of the questions that remained, it was the one you are now posting, because we could produce, transform to hydrogen and ammonia in order for transportation to Japan. But we should have a system that could reduce the cost of transportation, because we are very competitive, but FOB, and then transportation now, during the past years, the cost of transportation maritime has increased a lot. So maybe the new technologies and the possibility of agreements and all this issue about the Panama Canal that we are facing today with crazy ideas that are being posted, and we need to analyze, or maybe if it is possible to transform the green energy in products. Like I mentioned, the Japanese data centers, for instance, establishing in the northeast of Brazil. Pernambuco, for instance, has a very important nucleus of technology, which is the, I don't recall the name now, but it's a digital city or something like that. So on approaching that, you could expand being more competitive with data centers and compete with China, with the United States and other countries. And I agree that food is an issue, because Brazil is the most important supplier of food, of animal protein to the Middle East. And they have a lot of money, oil and everything. But at the end, what can you do with money if there is a conflict or something that you don't have food? So I know I'm dealing with Japan for more than 40 years. 40 years. I know that the traditions, the agriculture, the protectionism of Japan is very important. But at the end, cost of living is much more important than the protectionism. And Japan now is facing a period of the exchange rate has been, the yen has been devaluated a lot. Used to be around 100 yens per dollar. Now it's close to 150. And So Japanese became less expensive for tourists. And so these ideas may be the wrap up of our meeting today. You and the other experts that are listening of CEBRI and Japan House and the Consulate could make a resume, what we said and what we need to do. I like very much the system that I learned when I went to Japan in 1993 to learn about the total quality control, which is the 5W1H. The first W is what? The second is why. The third is who. And then when and where. And then comes the H, which is how and how much. If we follow this Japanese inspiration, maybe we can find our meeting finally with concrete suggestions for the visit of President Lula, because there is time for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, very much. You made my life very easy because I was going to wrap up the conversation now, and you just did that for me in a very intellectually sharp way. So thank you for that. In the minute that I have left, I would like to thank you again, Minister Furlan, for your participation. And also thank you, Professor Hamaguchi from Kobe University, for joining us in this conversation and sharing also your thoughts and comments on that. And I would like to thank again the Consulate General of Japan in Rio de Janeiro and Japan House for supporting CEBRI in this initiative. And of course, the more than 100 people that followed us live today in this conversation, and to everyone else who will watch this event recorded later on YouTube. So thank you for your partnership, and stay tuned on CEBRI's network for the next event that will be based on sustainability and environmental cooperation, one of the topics that was pretty much highlighted today in the conversation. So looking forward to that. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Professor. It was a pleasure sharing the last hour with you.
Thank you, Mariana.
Thank you, Hamaguchi-san. I learned a lot from you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much.
And take care and good night.
Thank you.